Welcome to Fragile Bonds, to the powerful stories of family, love, loss, and the choices that shape our lives. Now let's begin today's story.
My name is Rachel. I've been working as a librarian at our local library for 5 years now. Every morning, I truly loved that moment when I stepped into the library, enveloped by the scent of old wood and silence. Seeing the smiles on the faces of people who love books was my greatest joy. My husband James runs a real estate development company. As a young businessman, he's well known in our community. We've been married for 4 years. We don't have children yet, but we're just not in a hurry. We live together in a house in the suburbs, enjoying gardening on weekends and always going out for dinner dates on Fridays. Those peaceful days were what made us happiest. I've also built a wonderful relationship with James's family. James's mother, Catherine, is a former teacher and a woman widely respected in the community. The first day we met, she took my hand and said, "I'm so happy that someone as lovely as you became my son's wife." How those words warmed my heart. Catherine always praised me, about my cooking, about the house, about how I treated James. Every time I heard her say, "You're such a good daughter-in-law," I felt truly accepted as a member of this family. My brother-in-law Thomas is a serious accountant, still single. He's quiet but always treats me courteously. At family gatherings, he would listen to what I had to say with genuine interest. James's sister Jennifer is a designer raising a 3-year-old daughter. She and I hit it off right away. She often came to our house with her daughter Emma, and when Emma's laughter filled our home, my face would naturally soften, thinking that maybe someday when we had children, it would be like this. Our monthly family dinners were a precious tradition. Everyone would gather at Catherine's house around the table. Thomas would crack jokes about recent news, Jennifer would share funny stories from work, and James would report on company developments. When I shared stories from the library, everyone would laugh. A warm family circle. Being part of it made me happier than anything. I truly felt blessed. In the midst of those peaceful days, a major turning point came for James's business. A new commercial facility project became a huge success. The local newspaper ran a feature article with the headline, "Young Businessmen's Leap Forward." The entire family celebrated James's success from the heart. Catherine shed tears of joy, Thomas exchanged a firm handshake with him, and Jennifer hugged him saying, "That's my brother." I was proud of my husband too. Everything was going well. One weekend, we were enjoying gardening in our backyard. The spring sunshine was warm, and the smell of earth was pleasant. James dug up the flower bed with a shovel while I planted seeds. We made plans to add more flowers next year. I want more roses, tulips would be lovely too, how about sunflowers in summer? Those trivial conversations felt like they could go on forever. At dinner, James said, "Let's all go on a picnic to the lake sometime. On a nice day, with a basket." I nodded with a smile. That sounds wonderful. Jennifer and Emma would love it. While discussing such plans for the future, we enjoyed our meal. That night, as we relaxed on the sofa, James pulled me close to his shoulder. We seemed to be watching the drama on TV, but we weren't really watching anything. We were just feeling the warmth of that moment. "I love you, Rachel," James whispered. "I love you too," I said, resting my head on his chest. After the new project started, James began working late into the night every day. It wasn't unusual for him to come home after 10 at night, and every time I saw my husband opening the front door with a tired face, I worried. Even when I said, "Don't push yourself too hard," he would just smile and say, "I'm fine, we're almost over the hump." One morning, James suddenly grimaced at the breakfast table. "What's wrong?" I asked, and he put his hand to his chest and said, "My chest hurts." I immediately became concerned, but James brushed it off, saying, "I'm fine, it's probably just muscle strain. I carried heavy materials yesterday." But his expression clearly showed pain. A few days later, it happened again. This time it was during dinner. "My chest feels heavy," James muttered. I couldn't stand it anymore and strongly urged him to go to the hospital. "Please, get it checked. If it's nothing, that's fine." But he shook his head. "I'll go after next week's project is finished. I don't have time right now." I couldn't persuade him further after he said that so firmly. On the day of our monthly family dinner, James seemed tired and was quieter than usual. When Catherine asked with concern, "Are you okay?" "You don't look well," James tried to answer cheerfully. "I'm fine, Mother. I'm just a bit busy." Thomas looked at his brother with concern too, but said nothing. Only Jennifer said, "Don't push yourself too hard." But James smiled and said, "Don't worry." That smile seemed forced somehow, and my chest tightened. And then Tuesday came. At 2 in the afternoon, I was reading to children at the library. The little ones were listening intently to the picture book I was reading, their eyes shining. That peaceful time suddenly came to an end. My cell phone vibrated. I usually don't answer calls during work, but for some reason I had a bad feeling and picked up right away. "Is this Mrs. Rachel Miller?" A calm woman's voice. "Yes, it is. I'm calling from St. Mary's Hospital. Your husband, James Miller, has been brought in by ambulance. Please come to the hospital immediately." My mind went blank. I couldn't fall apart in front of the children. I explained the situation to a colleague and rushed out of the library. While driving, my hands trembled. Every time the light turned red, my anxiety and impatience grew. "Please, be okay." I prayed over and over in my heart. When I arrived at the hospital, I gave my husband's name at the reception. "ICU. It's on the 3rd floor." Those words alone conveyed the severity of the situation. I got in the elevator and pressed the button for the 3rd floor. The few seconds of travel time felt like an eternity. In front of the ICU, the entire family had already gathered. Catherine was sitting in a chair with her face covered by both hands. Thomas was leaning against the wall, looking up at the ceiling. Jennifer spotted me and rushed over. "Rachel," her eyes were red and swollen. "James." She couldn't say any more. The attending physician came out. Dr. Marcus Harrison was a doctor with a calm demeanor. He looked at all of us family members and quietly began to speak. "You're the Miller family. I need to talk to you." We were led into a small consultation room. Dr. Harrison gestured for us to sit and took a deep breath. "Mr. James has suffered a severe myocardial infarction. His condition is very serious." Myocardial infarction. Those words repeated in my head over and over. "Right now, we're doing everything we can to treat him in the intensive care unit. We're doing everything possible." We waited outside the ICU again. No one said anything. Only the sound of the clock's hands moving could be heard. Catherine was offering up prayers in a small voice. Thomas stood motionless. Jennifer gripped my hand tightly. Her hand was cold and trembling. After a while, Dr. Harrison came out of the ICU. The moment I saw his expression, I understood everything. "Family members," his voice was low and heavy. "We did everything we could to treat him, but Mr. James went into cardiac arrest and has passed away." Catherine let out a scream. Thomas pounded his fist against the wall. Jennifer collapsed in tears. But I couldn't make a sound. I could only stand there frozen. This is a dream. It must be a bad dream. I tried to think that, but the sounds of grief around me kept thrusting the reality at me. "Would you like to see him one last time?" Dr. Harrison asked quietly. Catherine nodded, and we were led to the morgue. A body covered with a white sheet. The nurse gently pulled back the sheet. There lay James. His eyes were closed, and he looked as if he were sleeping. But his skin was cold, and there was no pulse. I held his hand. The hand that had always been warm was now cold as ice. "I'm sorry. I should have taken you to the hospital sooner." Tears overflowed and wouldn't stop. "Please, open your eyes. Say my name one more time." But of course, there was no response. The body was placed in the morgue. Dr. Harrison told us, "I recommend that you consult with a funeral home about funeral arrangements." We nodded weakly. Everything was proceeding mechanically. I can't believe it. Just yesterday, we were together. The funeral was set for Friday. As we proceeded with preparations, Dr. Harrison called us together and said quietly, "The damage from the myocardial infarction was severe, the condition of the body." He trailed off, but I understood the meaning. "I recommend a closed casket funeral." Catherine nodded. "Let's do that. I don't want everyone to remember James's final appearance. I want them to remember him as he was when he was healthy." We agreed. We would hold the funeral without seeing his face. An obituary was published in the local newspaper. Many messages of condolence arrived. Company employees, business associates, library colleagues. Everyone mourned James. While I felt the bonds of family, my heart sank into deep sadness. When Friday comes, we'll really say goodbye. Thinking that made my chest feel like it would burst. Friday morning dawned with gray skies. It was as if the whole world was in mourning. I slipped into a black dress and stood in front of the mirror. My reflection was pale, with deep circles under my eyes. I had barely slept these past few days. The church funeral began at 10 in the morning. More than 200 people attended. Company employees, business associates, neighbors, and my library colleagues. Everyone had gathered to mourn James. In front of the altar stood the closed casket. A beautiful wood-grained casket. But I couldn't see my husband's face inside. The pastor offered prayers, and eulogies were read. A friend from James's college days spoke about their memories together. The company's vice president talked about his passion for work. I tearfully expressed my gratitude to the attendees. My voice trembled, and I barely made it through. Catherine was crushed by grief, supported by Thomas and Jennifer. Seeing that, I felt that as a member of the family, we were all sharing this sorrow together. When the ceremony ended, we moved to the cemetery. It was a quiet hilltop cemetery about 15 minutes by car from the church. The casket was carried from the hearse and placed next to the dug hole. The pastor offered a final prayer. "Ashes to ashes, dust to dust." Those words drifted away on the wind. Slowly, the casket was lowered into the ground. The ropes were gradually loosened, and the casket reached the bottom of the hole. At that moment, I felt as if my heart was sinking with it. This is really the end. I'll never see my husband again. I took a white rose in my hand and threw it into the hole. The rose fell quietly onto the casket. Catherine threw in a flower, and so did Thomas, Jennifer, and then all the attendees threw flowers one after another. As I watched the casket being covered with flowers, I could only stand there frozen. It was a long, long day. The funeral didn't finish until after 4 in the afternoon. The attendees left one by one. The last remaining family members also got into their cars, looking exhausted. "Rachel, call anytime if you need anything," Jennifer hugged me. "Thank you," that was all I could manage to say. The funeral home's car offered to drive me home. At 4:30, I sat in the back seat, staring blankly out the window. The city scenery flowed past. People were walking normally, laughing, living their lives. But my world felt as if it had stopped. Exhaustion and sadness made it hard to think clearly. I just wanted to get home and be alone. The car stopped in front of my house. "Take care," the driver said kindly. I nodded slightly and got out of the car. I began dragging my heavy feet toward the front door. As I tried to find my keys in my bag, something appeared in the corner of my vision. Someone was standing on the front porch. I looked up. The person's build looked familiar. My heart jumped. No, that couldn't be. The figure slowly turned around. It was James. Time stopped. No, the world stopped. I stood frozen, doubting my eyes. Was this a hallucination? Had my grief driven me mad? But it was definitely James standing there. My husband, alive, moving, breathing, was standing there. Rachel! James shouted. That voice was definitely his. Leave your things, we need to run right now. My mind couldn't keep up. You. My voice trembled. You're supposed to be dead. I had attended his funeral today. I had buried his casket in the cemetery. So why was he here? At the funeral, the casket. I buried you. James rushed over and grabbed my arm. The warmth of his hand told me this was real. I'll explain later. There's no time now. His eyes were deadly serious. There was even fear in them. He pulled me toward his car parked on the street. James, what? I tried to resist in confusion, but he pushed me into the passenger seat. He jumped into the driver's seat himself and started the engine. The car took off at high speed. We drove through the residential area. James kept checking the rearview mirror. As if he were running from something. James, explain. I shouted. You died. Dr. Harrison declared you dead. I held your hand. It was cold. There was no pulse. Tears overflowed. I attended your funeral. I buried your casket. James glanced at me for a moment. In his eyes was pain and some deep regret. He paused as if choosing his words. I really did die once. I couldn't breathe. What are you saying? But I came back to life, James said, facing forward. I'll explain everything later. Right now, we need to run. Your life is in danger too. My life? The confusion grew. What are we running from? James checked the rearview mirror again. In his expression, I saw a fear I had never seen before. From my family. He said quietly but clearly. And you're being targeted too. Family. Catherine, Thomas, Jennifer. Those people who had been so warm and kind. What are you talking about? That's impossible. Everyone was mourning your death. Catherine was crying her heart out. It was all an act. James's voice was cold. They're the ones who tried to kill me. Those words echoed in me over and over. Tried to kill. The family. I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. But my supposedly dead husband was now driving next to me. Faced with this reality, I didn't know what to believe anymore. The car entered the highway. The speed increased. The sun was beginning to set on the horizon. Orange light filled the car's interior. I'm taking us to a safe place now, James said. I'll tell you everything there. What I learned. Why they tried to kill me. And why you're being targeted too. I looked out the window. The familiar city scenery was getting farther and farther away. Was the world I knew. My voice trembled. All a lie. James didn't answer. He just gripped the steering wheel tightly. That silence told me everything. We arrived at a motel 50 miles from town. An old building with a neon sign half burned out. James paid cash for a room. Can't use credit cards. We can be tracked. His words spoke to the severity of the situation. When we entered the room, James immediately closed the curtains. In the dim room, he sat on the edge of the bed and exhaled deeply. I sat in a chair and stared at my husband. I still couldn't believe it. My supposedly dead husband was here now. Rachel, James began quietly. What I'm about to tell you may be hard to believe. He looked me straight in the eye. But it's all true. Please listen to the end. I nodded. I was prepared to be surprised by anything I heard. No, I really wasn't. But I needed to know. I did collapse at the office on Tuesday, James began. But it wasn't a heart attack. It was poison. Poison? I gasped. That morning, Mother came to the office and brought me coffee. She said, "You've been working hard, here's something for you." James's voice trembled. I drank it all. It was good coffee. But an hour later, my chest hurt, my vision blurred, and I collapsed. Catherine. That kind mother-in-law. No way. When I was taken to the hospital, I really went into cardiac arrest, James continued. Dr. Harrison declared me dead too. I really died, Rachel. I had no consciousness. I felt nothing. There was only darkness. My hands trembled. If what he was saying was true, he died once, and then. But Dr. Harrison didn't give up, tears welled up in James's eyes. After the family left, he secretly performed resuscitation measures in the morgue. Electric shocks, drugs, over and over. Normally that would be impossible. But he didn't give up. And miraculously, I was resuscitated. Why? I squeezed out my voice. Why did Dr. Harrison go that far? James took a deep breath. Dr. Harrison was Mother's former lover. The world swayed. What? 40 years ago, Mother was dating him. She loved him, a young medical student. But Mother came from a poor family and was struggling financially. Then a rich man appeared, my father. Mother hesitated but chose father in the end. James's voice became pained. Dr. Harrison couldn't forget Mother after that. That's why he continued working as a doctor in the same town as Mother. To watch over her from afar. I held my head. This was a nightmare. But how I wished it were just a nightmare. Mother asked him to cooperate. To kill me and write the death certificate. He refused at first, apparently. But Mother had something on him. Evidence of a past medical malpractice. She threatened to make it public. James clenched his fists. Dr. Harrison had no choice but to cooperate. But he couldn't kill me completely. His conscience remained. So, he resuscitated you, I murmured. When I woke up, Dr. Harrison was crying. He said, I'm sorry, but you must live. And then he told me something even more terrifying. James held my hand. He said, tonight, your wife will be killed too. My body stiffened. Me too. Mother's plan was this. Kill me, and you inherit the $20 million estate. But a few days later, you're killed too, made to look like an accident. Then the legal heirs become my family. All the assets become theirs. Why would they do such a thing? Tears overflowed. James stood up and looked out the window. Mother has terminal cancer. 6 months to live. Cancer. No one knows. Mother was hiding it. And before she died, she tried to protect her children's future. James turned around. Mother was in extreme poverty when she was young. She had nothing to eat, froze in winter, and even when she got sick, couldn't go to the hospital. So she has this belief that life without money is hell. She absolutely didn't want her children to experience the same thing. I shook my head. But you were successful. You weren't struggling with money. Thomas has a $2 million debt from gambling addiction. Jennifer is in divorce proceedings and can't pay alimony. James said painfully. Mother tried to save everyone. By sacrificing me. I stood up and walked around the room. Was this real? The family that had treated me so warmly and kindly had actually been trying to kill us. At the funeral, were all those tears fake? Acting. All of it. James nodded sadly. But Thomas was different. Thomas. James took out his smartphone from his pocket and showed me the screen. It was an anonymous message. Tonight, Rachel's life is in danger. Run immediately. This is. I think it's from Thomas. He really loved me, his younger brother. But he was threatened by Mother and my sister, and had no choice but to cooperate with the plan. But his conscience remained. So at least he tried to save you. James turned off the screen. Without him, I couldn't have saved you. James took out an envelope from his bag. Dr. Harrison gave this to me. Evidence. Inside was a USB memory stick with recorded data and documents. A recording of Mother's conversation with Dr. Harrison. A copy of the poison prescription. With this, we can prove everything. I took the envelope. It was heavy. All the truth was packed inside. We need to go to the police. Yes, James nodded. Right away. He called the state police. I'm a victim of attempted murder. I have evidence. Please protect us immediately. On the other end of the phone, I could hear a voice confirming something. Yes, James Miller. I'm supposed to be dead, but I'm alive. An hour later, 2 police officers arrived at the motel room. We explained everything and submitted the evidence. The police officers' faces hardened as they listened to the recording. We'll get arrest warrants immediately. You two will be under protection. That night, we were placed under police protection. I couldn't sleep. Even when I lay in bed, even when I closed my eyes, those warm family smiles floated up. It was all a lie. It was all acting. At 2 a.m, police raided Catherine's home. Catherine, Thomas, and Jennifer were all arrested at once. The next morning, Dr. Harrison turned himself in. The morning news was filled with the story. Local notable arrested for attempted murder. On the TV screen was footage of Catherine in handcuffs. She was shouting at the camera. I did it for my children. What did I do wrong? There wasn't a trace of warmth left in that face. A year later, all the trials were concluded. The sentences were harsh. Catherine received 25 years for attempted murder and fraud. Jennifer received 15 years for conspiracy. Dr. Harrison received 12 years for aiding attempted murder. However, his sentence was reduced in consideration of saving a life through resuscitation. And Thomas received 10 years through a plea bargain. Thomas testified to everything in court. Mother and sister's plan, his own weakness, and his love for his brother. I loved my brother. But I was weak. Pursued by debt, I couldn't make sound judgments anymore. He said through tears. But in the end, I wanted to protect my brother. That's my only redemption. James sat quietly in the gallery, listening to his brother's words. His conscience saved us, he told me later. I can't hate him. Since that incident, our lives changed dramatically. But our bond actually deepened. We wandered between life and death, experienced betrayal, and still survived. That experience made us stronger. We celebrated our anniversary again. A small restaurant, dinner for just the two of us. Let's start over, James held my hand. This time, let's create a real family. The company is gradually recovering too. After the incident, management was temporarily in doubt, but with sincere responses and the support of employees, we're regaining trust. I continue my work at the library. The smiles of people who love books heal me. I learned something through this ordeal. You shouldn't trust people easily. But you must trust those who should be trusted. Discerning that is more important than anything. My own parents came to support us. My library colleagues too, and James's college friends too, everyone supported us. Family connected by heart, not blood. That's what real family is, we learned. The people in the community also warmly welcomed us. I cried many times at people's kindness. One Sunday afternoon, we were gardening in the yard. The autumn sunshine was soft, and the smell of earth was pleasant. This is our everyday life, James said with a smile. Ordinary, but happy. I smiled and took his hand. Hey, you, I said a bit nervously. I'm pregnant. 3 months. James's eyes widened. Really? His voice was trembling. Really? Really, I placed his hand on my belly. Our family is growing. James hugged me. Thank you, Rachel. Tears welled up in his eyes. Let's teach this child real love. Not twisted love, but genuine love. We sat on the garden bench and talked about the future. What is family? I asked, and James looked up at the sky. It's not blood ties. It's the heart that cares for each other. But when that love becomes twisted, tragedy is born. That's why we need to teach this child real love. A year later, on our anniversary, we renewed our marriage vows in church. A small ceremony, inviting only close friends. In front of the pastor, we gazed at each other. Once again, we vow to love, protect, and trust each other. And we kissed. That day, I thought I had lost everything. But actually, I hadn't lost anything. Because it wasn't real to begin with. And now, I have a real family. This is my new life. This is true happiness. What is family? It's not blood ties. It's trust, affection, and hearts that care for each other. Sometimes, those connected by blood can be the greatest betrayers. But those not connected by blood can become true family. What matters is discerning who truly loves and tries to protect you. Having the eyes to see that. And having the courage to recognize twisted love. Our story begins from here.